Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special Edgware United Synagogue Adult Education session, special for several reasons. The very first session of the Adult Education Programme on 30th of November 2015 was entitled The Forgotten Refugees, the Exodus of Jews from Arab Countries and Iran, second anniversary, and our guest speaker was Elia Meghnagi, and it set a precedent for remembering the Jews from Arab countries, including a film, The Silent Exodus, and a talk by Evelyn Habib in 2016, and showing the film Remember Baghdad with an introduction by its director Fiona Murphy in 2017. Special also because Elia is a well-known and respected member of our community, having been a warden and a member of the board who works tirelessly for this kahila, including organising the summer Shabbat afternoon lecture series with distinguished rabbis. Beyond Edgware, he is a director of the Simon Wiesenthal Centre and in the past was appointed by the Jewish Memorial Council as a visiting teacher and lecturer for small communities. He has many published articles in publications such as the Jewish Press, the Jewish Tribune, the London Jewish News, and is frequently invited to speak on the Jews of Libya. Now, 7 years on from his appearance in that first adult education presentation, he returns for our 118th session to talk about his new book, Escape from Benghazi, Diary of an Impostor, published by Valentine Mitchell, who have submitted it to the Sophie Brody Awards Committee of the American Library Association for an award for outstanding achievement in Jewish literature. It is a very personal account of his life and very easy to read, with unexpected subtitles in chapters such as Shiver Me Timbers, Where Are Your Horns, and Arrivederci Roma. After he's finished his talk, Elia will be available to sign copies of his book for those who wish to purchase it, and there will be refreshments not provided by his company Snowcrest.
It's only when you mention Snowcrest I recognize the person you're talking about. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My thanks go to Rabbi Lister for all the help, and the chairman, and the wardens, and the shul staff, and of course Tony Honigberg for arranging all the recording and understand even YouTube or something. I especially thank also, especially Spencer, Nathan, for working so hard for the community and having worked so hard to get this evening organized. We really do appreciate you. My special thanks also go to Sue Neal and Sandy Potashnik because a few years ago in 2019, they asked me to speak at the Holocaust memorial here. And for the first time, somebody not Sephardi, not from an Arab country, recognized that we also had suffered through the Nazis and the fascists and the Arabs and so on. And when I gave the talk, I realized then from the reaction of the audience that we had to do something to try and let people know about it. In fact, I mentioned the fact that the camp, which was deep in the desert, where there were some 1,750 people, of which 550, including the chief rabbi, died in the camp from malnutrition, hard work, and beatings, basically. The chief rabbi was in his 70s or 80s, had to, every morning, his job was to sweep the camp. Very little food. Anyway, I mentioned at the time that the British forces, helped by the Palestinian Jews who volunteered to fight with the British, they are the ones who opened the camp and saved the people. And one of the speakers was Lord, what's his name, Pickles. And he, in fact, he confirmed what I said and said his father was one of those people who opened the camp. I was astonished. Anyway, the book. So I decided to start. I've given talks all over London, as far as Rome and Israel and so on. And every time I've been told to write a book. When you're going to write a book? And the opportunity came, unfortunately, at the worst time for the majority of people, and that's lockdown. And I couldn't just sit there and watch each other and so on. So decided this is decided I better start writing. And thank God I had Beryl to my side there, so that she was able to correct my sometimes Italianized English into English. And of course, when I finished the book or the actual manuscript, and I sent it, the first company that came to my mind is Valentine Mitchell. I've seen it in all the Jewish books. And they took 3 months to reply. And I thought the longer they take, the better is the answer, is going to be the answer. And in fact, when they phoned me or emailed me 3 months later, they said, "We're very pleased to tell you that our readers love your book and we're going ahead with it. But now you have to choose. You, the author, have to pay for the editor." Okay, I thought, my daughter's an editor. She said, "Oh, what's her name?" So I gave the name and the details, and they loved what they saw because she did the Prime Minister's book and etc. And you see her name on it. And they said, "Oh, she's perfect." I said, "Why perfect?" Because she's of the same school as we are, a school of editing. What is that? So, well, there are two schools: the Chicago school, and the other name I can't think of it. And she's of the Chicago school, like us. Great. So, what's the difference? As one example, if you've got uh, numbers in your book, if you've got 2 digits, then you write it in digits, in numbers. More than that, if it's 2 digits, you write it in letters. If more than that, then you have to write in numbers. And you can imagine if you got a book full of numbers and so on, you have to go around to change it. So it was perfect. And but Deborah, bless her, she was very busy with a couple of books. She said, "I've got to finish those books first." 6 months later, she started working. And the result is what you'll see tonight, which I'm very pleased about. So I don't want to say too much because I'd like to look at the books, if possible, if there's time. But I'll give you some indication of what went on with the book. I want to tell you a story that I'm not even sure if Rabbi listeners heard it, because I learned that story in a Italian Catholic school which I attended. They never told me that the person involved was a Jew. Anyway, the story is about Agrippa. And Agrippa, in his when he was as a youngster, by the way, his uncle managed to kill most of his family, except for Agrippa and 1 or 2 others who were in Rome. And Agrippa was a playboy, basically, a Roman playboy. But one day, they asked him if he could go and help. You see, all the slaves in Rome went on strike and went outside Rome. And the Roman patricians didn't know what to do without a slave. I don't think they could dress themselves or even eat. Everything was done by the Romans. And they asked Agrippa, "Would you please go and try and bring them back?" So he went and he told them this lovely story. He said to him, once upon a time, the hand went on strike against the mouth. They said, We do all the work, the hands. We do all the work. We have to wash them every time and so on. And then what happens? You get the food, all the beautiful food, and you taste it, and we do nothing. So we're on strike. So what happens? The body gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and they both suffer. So he said, "This is the same with you, slaves. You need the Romans as much as they need you. You go back, and I'll try and arrange some better terms." So they went, and then Claudius, who was the emperor at the time, wanted to um, give Agrippa his due, and praise him and all that. And he decided he will make it king of Judea, and in fact expanded. Uh, and But before that, he wanted for all the Roman um, patricians and so on, royalty and so on, they want to make a big party for him. And they were all sitting there, lying down, like we do at Pesach. We sit on the floor and they're eating. And then, the men in Rome, in ancient Rome, had more jewels than the ladies. And when Agrippa walked in, there was a total silence, and he could detect the disappointment. The disappointment was that he didn't have any jewels. He came in with his son and daughter, and no jewels. And then he realized the disappointment. Look at it. They were expecting somebody, the emperor, respected, and what would be dressed full of jewels. So he said, "Sorry, lady, Romans, whatever. These are my jewels." He pointed at the two children. Then I should have realized then that he must have been a Jew. They never told me he's a Jew. When I came to England and went to Gateshead and started learning the Gemara, it tells you he's a Jew. And they were greatly disappointed with him because he stopped being just a playboy. He took the job of running the country very seriously. He was given a very big gold chain by Caligula, and he gave that chain to the temple. And he worked hard for the temple, and in fact, the Gemara has got a few examples when for example, they were during laning. I understand that the king can sit down, but the rest do not. But he insisted on sitting down, and the rabbi would say to him, "Agrippa, you can stand up. It's okay. You are one of us," because he never considered himself fully Jewish. But I understand Rashi says in there that he is fully Jewish. Anyway, so unfortunately, he worked so hard trying to strengthen the temple and so on, that the Romans became suspicious, and he was poisoned 4 years after becoming the king. He was poisoned, and we're not quite sure. Some people think it's the Romans, some people think it's the Christians, because they tried to get him to back them, his backing, but he refused. He threw them out. So, so why am I mentioning this? Is because um, the capital of Cyrenaica, where Benghazi is, used to be a town called Cyrene, where the name Cyrenaica comes from. And Cyrene was full of Greeks and Berbers, who were the original inhabitants of Libya. The Romans didn't trust the Greeks, so they encouraged the Jews to go into Cyrene. This is the time when the Romans were fairly, they treated Jews fairly well. Um, and when the Bar Kokhba revolt started, the Jews of Cyrene, together with those of Cyprus and Alexandria, joined in the fight, and they fought the Romans. And the Romans had to bring in Hadrian, who was then in general, whatever, in Britain. They had to bring him to try and quell the rebellion. The result of that rebellion is that Cyrene was completely destroyed, It's today just a ruin. And I think the name for it, Arabic name is Shachat, which means, I believe, a pauper. And according to a historian, a Roman historian, his name is Dio Cassius. You can look it up on Google. He claims that the Jews killed 220,000 Romans, Greek and Romans, and they drank their blood and ate their flesh. And that I consider the first blood libel against the Jews. Of course, that is a nonsense, but when he said 220,000, it might not be 220,000, but it gives you an indication of the kind of fighting it was. Well, Cyrene was completely destroyed. The new capital of Cyrenaica became Benghazi, and that's the connection. But in fact, it wasn't called Benghazi at the time. It was called Berenice, which is the name of the daughter of Agrippa. Unfortunately, the son of Agrippa, Agrippa II, joined the Romans in the fight. He tried to convince the Jews not to be so silly, but in the end, he joined the Romans. But they called Benghazi Berenice after, I believe, after a name. I can't say how historically correct or not, but that was the name. And afterwards, when the Arabs conquered Libya, they changed it into Benghazi. So I'll jump. The Jews, the Berbers were very nice to the Jews, and they gave them shelter and all that. Even today, the Berbers are very friendly with the Jews, and they consider also they've been occupied by the Arabs, and they were changed and forced, whatever. So the Jews disappeared from Libya for a few centuries, and then the Ottoman came and occupied it, and Jews started coming back. Then there was a very, very big immigration from Italy. They had settlements in a few places in Libya. Of course, they joined the community, but they kept the language, and they kept sending their children to Italy to study. And so I'll jump all that until 1911, when Libya, Italy, or Rome, if you like, occupied Libya again. And when they arrived there, they found, much to their surprise, there was an Italian-speaking community. The Jews there, a large number of them spoke Italian. So an occupying force needs administration. So they put the Jews as administrators. And they run the economy, the banks, the ports, and all that. And Mussolini, who came in power a few years later, he was well disposed towards the Jews. In fact, he even formed an Italian Jewish force to go and fight in Palestine. But his idea was, it didn't do for love of the Jews, but he thought he was trying to, well, he did occupy Ethiopia and Abyssinia at the time, and France and Britain and America went all against him. And he was hoping that the Jews in France and in Britain and so on would influence their governments to leave him alone. And between you and I think he was right, because France and Italy and Britain carved up Africa between them. So why should Italy not do the same, But unfortunately, once he found that they had no chance, that the Jews were not going to help him, he overestimated them. So he joined Hitler. And from then on, he showed the true face of fascism. Because I've got a book which can show you youngsters, young people, and 17, 18-year-old Jews who wore a fascist uniform with a Magen David. Yeah, I can show it to you. That's how it was. But gradually it started getting more and more difficult. And I'll tell you just a couple of things how the Jews in Libya, they fought back. where they fought the Italians, and later on they fought the Arabs. They didn't give in so easily, and they had also some of the Jews from Palestine helping teaching them self-defense. But a couple of examples. For example, Mussolini arrived into just a special visit to Libya, and he arrived on Saturday. And as they drove him through to the town, they found everything was closed. He asked the governor, Major Balbo, his name was very well known. I said, "What's going on? Why is everything closed?" Oh, he said, "It's Sabato." Sabato is Italian for Shabbat, for Saturday. It also means Sabbath. Sabato. So what? He said, "It's Sabbath, so what?" Oh, they don't understand the Jews don't work on Saturday. He said, "They can't do that. They're destroying the economy of the country. You have to tell them to open. You won't do it." So he sent his youth, fascist youth, into the shul. They took some of the people, the whole community, into the street and beat up the rabbi and the gabbaim and so on. So the people turned around to the rabbi and said, "What do we do? They're going to start shooting." So rabbi, well, they understand the rule. When your life is in danger, you have to do what is necessary. And they put a lovely condition. Said, "What we want you to do is to have a special Saturday tax. A pair of shoes says £50, but that comes in, that's each shoe. So it's add 30%, whatever. Why? Because if you come tomorrow, this is a Saturday tax." And the idea of the rabbis was that people will not get used to earning money and so on, because once they get used to it, they'll carry on. Mussolini, like all these people, come and go, and it worked for a while. But the problem is that the ports were run by the Jews, and the banks were run by the Jews. So it worked to some extent, but the rabbis tried. Another thing, there was a couple of um, fascist youth. They're picking on Jews wherever they go. This is in Tripoli, by the way. And they picked on one, and they picked on the wrong one because he was the champion in the 1936 boxing uh, uh, in Israel, in Palestine, in Israel. The what do you call the Jewish organization? Maccabean. Thank you. And he killed one of them. Yeah. And so, of course, there was a big trial. And the Jewish lawyer, realized he's not going to win. It's just, but there was the press from international press there. So one day, the lawyer came, he lit a candle, and he started looking around under the chairs and so on. The judge said, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I know up there it's written justitia, in Latin, justice, but I can't see justice. I'm looking for justice." The judge realizes he's dealing with somebody. It's not so easy. He won the case, and the judge and I think that lawyer became some had some position in Israel later on. So this is the sort of thing they had to do. I have to jump a little because I want to tell a few things. Um, Incidentally, I think you like this one. My father was part of the group that went to offer Mussolini a present. The Muslims gave him a silver sword, and the Jews gave him a silver menorah. So I asked my father, "What did you do?" He said, "Well, I washed my hands after." With or without bracha, I don't know. So it's that's the sort of situation. Um, then Mussolini asked the governor to start organizing a camp, to send the Jews to camp. And the governor said, "Look, if you take the Jews in Tripoli, were a very high percentage of 20% or something of the population, and they used to run the country. And Balbo said, you can't do that. If you take the Jews out of Tripoli, the economy will collapse. And then he writes, why are you bothering with the Jews? They're a dying race anyway. And Mussolini, very famous letter he sent back. He said, you're right about them running the economy, but you're wrong about it being a dying race. They appear to be moribund, but they have a habit of rising up all the time. He was right there. So, anyway, so um, he did not. Uh, he listened, and there was no camp made for the Jews of Tripoli. But the Jews of Benghazi, where I come from, were much, much smaller, some 2,000 or so. And so he insisted you start organizing um, the evacuation. The governor, who was my uncle's close friend, this guy used to come to our house, not before my time, and Friday nights he used to play cards, but he loved Jewish food. That's the one. That's what he said. So he sent for my uncle and said, look, I have to do it. I want you to organize the evacuation of the Jews, and you've got 12 months. You do it properly. And he was furious. My uncle was furious. He says, spat him, said, how dare you? You ask me, what do you think? I'm a traitor? I'm going to betray my brothers? And so on. He spat him and ran away. Unfortunately, he went and told the shul, told the people, do something. Those who've got foreign passport, go. But, it's going to happen. Unfortunately, one of the guys who heard it, he went to the governor, said, look, I'll organize it for you in 3 months if you spare my family. And he organized every Shabbos. A list appeared in notice board in the shul, and people were dragged and sent to these concentration camps about 2,000 miles away. Anyway, so unfortunately, this guy, we can't judge him because you don't know under the pressures you're under in those days. His wife left him, his children left him. I got to know him anyway, so it's irrelevant. But my uncle suffered tremendously mentally from that. He started anytime if he saw any Italians or Arabs, he would scream at them, and he ended up going to Israel. And unfortunately, the only thing they did forget what he was. He was the only civilian member of the Italian Officers Club. That's it. And in fact, he got to Israel and they put him in a mental home for years and forgot about him until an article appeared on one of the Israeli papers about this story, and people realized who they put in prison. It was free, but he was a lot older by then. So this is this whole thing was happening. By my father, in fact, when the British were arriving, freeing the Jews, he went to the British and said, "Tell you what, I know where the food supplies of the Italian army are, because the Italians escaped, run away, and he led them there, and they, as a thank you, he was given a job as manager of the NAFI until 1952, when the British left Libya and he became independent. Probably explains why he found it very easy to come to this country afterwards. So there was a lot. There wasn't between from the end of the war to the 50s. Well, certainly to mid 50s. There wasn't a proper strong government. The British were not very helpful, I'm sorry to say. And so there was many attacks of the Jews. First, they had to deal with the fascists and these and the Germans and so on, and now they have to deal with the Arabs. Most of the Arabs were lovely people, no problem, but the youth, the unemployed youth, were easily taken by the diatribes of Nasser and so on, and of nationalism, and so we had a lot of fight problems. I don't know how much time. How much time have I got? Yeah, okay, a few more minutes. Uh, we go into the modern days. A lot of this and a lot more you'll hear, you'll read in the book. Incidentally, the book is not all about these. It's a lot about. There's a lot of fun, and I travel the world, and there's some very nice stories. Maybe I'll tell you one or two. Anyway, so one day we in our shul we had what is known as Tom Dibur, yeah, fast for speaking. It was, I think, Yortzeit of a very great rabbi, Mekubal, and so on. And so they decided to have a day for learning and no talking in shul. So we wanted I mean, my brother and us and our friends who were in this Italian school wanted to go to shul as early as possible. Normally, Benghazi, if you can imagine, it's like a circle, semicircle, with the seas around there, and the Jews and the Europeans and so on lived around. Well, let's say on this side of the town, and the school was on this side, and we used to go the long way around to avoid the Arabs who lived in the middle. On this particular day, we were in a hurry, so we thought we'll take a shortcut, we'll take a chance. And there were about a dozen of us, a few older kids and youngsters. And we said to them, look, if we come across any Arab youth, the the usual way their usual way is to throw stones. So use your satchel to avoid the stones, but carry on walking. Don't stop. And we arrived about a third of the way, and suddenly we saw there was a bomb site, a big opening. Some 30 youth were playing football and so on. And when they saw us, I knew they started throwing stones. And my brother sitting there said, "We just carry on and try and avoid the stones and carry on." We had the older uh, boys were at the back, myself and my brother, and in the front some others. Then I suddenly heard screaming. It was my younger brother. Two Arab youths on top of him beat him up, broke his nose. He was only fixed when he came to England. Well, I saw red, and I had a saucepan, an aluminium saucepan where the food was brought in, and I rushed and beat up one of the Arabs, these two. The other 30 just disappeared. They must have thought we were hundreds, I don't know what, but they just disappeared. And thanks to my older brother, said they called me Lillo in those days, and that's my Italian version. So Lillo, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to kill him. So he stopped me. I stopped, and we started withdrawing. Took my brother back, and I'll cut the story short. We get home, and the following morning, I get a phone call from the police station. They want you. My father said they want you. They only you. They want you. They don't want me to impress you or anything. I thought they want to. As I was a witness to what was going on. When I got there, can you hear me? Sorry. When I got there, there was one policeman there. He started beating me. Anything I said, shut up, be quiet. He said, uh, I didn't speak much Arabic, a bit of Judeo-Arabic or something, but he understood me. And he said, go home, go home. I said, this is my home. No, no, your home is Italy. Go, go home. And so he beat me. And then later on, an older policeman walked in and they all went quiet. He said, we go home. When we need you, we'll call you. When I got home, the some good friends, Arab friends of the family, advised the president that he's got to leave the country. He will be stabbed. Somebody will stab him. He'll be back in prison. You'll never see him again. Referring to me, of course. Luckily, I got from my Italian school. I got a special high results, whatever, and I was told there was a special grant from a British company for Pi. Those of you who are as old as me will remember Pi Radio Company. Yeah. So the Pi Radio Company offered two promising young people in that school a grant to go and study in Cambridge, pre-university engineering, and I was one of them. So the two of us, I managed to escape, and luckily, whether by accident or by design, uh, all my documents until then had the name Lilo Meghnagi. But in that one, I managed to get a foreign uh, travel document, not Libyan. Our lucky for us, our neighbor in the block where we lived we were on the first floor, just one house. One house on the second floor was the Egyptian consul, and he was absolutely wonderful. He and his wife were very good friends. Whenever there was any problem, we just go and hide there. And he managed to obtain this document. And in the document, it said Elia Meghnagi, just in case in the airport they realized who it was. And I got to Rome and I got to Cambridge. And halfway through my studies in Cambridge, I got a phone call from the hotel, from the Hilton, an Arab friend of the family. He said, "I've got a message from your dad. Come over." And I went over. He said to me that I've got some money for you. Not a lot, because the people at the airport, they checked what money you have. But this is the last money you see, because your father was asked to sign to guarantee your return. Otherwise, no more money. And your father messages, don't come back, but there's no more money. You're on your own. So I was 17 then, and that's the rest of the story. You have to read the book, I'm afraid. So, any questions? All I can say is there's a lot of adventures in all over the world, and my main, the thing that kept me going, honestly, is my Jewishness, my Yiddishkeit, my Jewishness. That could not take away from me. I can tell you some lovely stories happen in school where they try to convert us, but not too much. But I'll just tell you a couple of quick stories. Um, Imagine in a Catholic school, in a class, that they always have a big cross, obviously, and there's always a prayer, which is very nice. But for us, because there are about 10% Jewish boys there, they had the universal prayer. But we still wouldn't say anything. Why? Because we have a cross in front of us. They were getting very angry. We didn't tell them the reason, but so we asked the rabbi, and he said in his best non-Yiddish, he said, Shmerel, he said, why don't you turn to the window, turn your head to the window, say the prayer? And that's what we did. So there are some jokes. Okay. Oh, my wife wants to ask me a question.
To ask you why you didn't mention when somebody wrote Fiat on the board.
Oh, yeah, no, we had games. One day, we always started the lessons with Bible studies, and they always read from the Bible, the Torah. Yeah, and one day I got up. I said to my teacher, we were very good friends. They're lovely people, and they're devoted to their work, but they're devoted more to teaching. That kind of institution is for teaching. It's called Istituto della Salle. This guy, Della Salle, was French, and he was a bit disappointed with the schools run by the nuns. It was just religion, no maths, no nothing. He started a proper school where you learnt everything. So, I forgot what I was saying. No, so this teacher was reading us the Bible. So I said, excuse me, what are you teaching me? All you're doing, strengthening my own religion. You talk about David, Moses, and so on. Why are you wasting your time? So he said to me, he said, look, if there are so millions of people who believe in this person, Jesus, so there must be something in it. So one of my friends, who is an old guy now living in Netanya, he said to me, excuse me, if it's quantity you're talking about, you should be Buddhist. There are more Buddhists than anybody else. If it's quality, you should be Jew. I'll leave it at that. What? Oh, okay. My brother, Bear keeps reminding me that my brother is sitting over there, Clement. He once, he probably forgets, he once wrote on the notice board, the teacher left for a minute, he wrote Fiat, Fabrica, manufacturer, Israeliana, instead of Italiana, automobiles, Tel Aviv, instead of Torino. And the teacher walked in, he was furious. He said, you don't understand. He said, Jews is something of the past, never mind Tel Aviv. He said, you'll all become Christians and so on. I met him at a meeting in Rome some 15 years ago. And I asked him, what do you do now? He's a nice little old man like me. And I said, I said to him, where are you now? He said, I teach French. I said, where? He said, in Jerusalem, to Palestinians in Jerusalem. I said, do you realize you've had to have an Israeli visa? He said, yes, I know. Okay, very happy.
Elia?
Yes.
It's me over here.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Mike.
Yeah. I haven't really got a question for you, but so I've heard most of your stories over the last 40 years. I've been well entertained.
They're the same.
Well entertained by them. I'd just like to say that it was such a wonderful experience to read the book and hear all the stories in the right order.
Yes.
And I have to say,
yes.
As I said to Anthony, I'm more in awe of you now than I have been over the last 40 years. Because it's quite an amazing story. Anyway, anybody who hasn't got the book should really get a copy of it.
May I tell everyone, he's a very good friend, but he's not my salesman. But he's doing a good job. Okay, any more questions? Yeah.
I was going to say, you'll really enjoy the book, but for me, it was a walk down memory lane because there were certain chapters I just knew everybody you were writing about, not in Libya. It's Stamford Hill and Finsbury Park, and it's just a good read.
Can somebody who has received the book say something not so nice? Just the rabbi. Rabbi, it's all yours.
It was too short.
I do have more stories.
In your introduction, you say that in this shul they say, oh, the Sephardi guy, and elsewhere in Edgware, they say, oh, he's the one that goes to the Ashkenazi shul. Why?
Yeah, the reason why I called the book, excuse me, The Diary of an Impostor, is because in Libya they said to me, go back to Italy, go home. I said, but I'm born here, I'm Libyan. No, you're Italian. When I reach Italy, oh, you're the one from Libya, come in. Then I arrive in England, my passport says of unknown nationality. No, sorry, not my passport, my naturalization document of unknown nationality. Here in this shul, which I made my home, I'm the Sephardi who comes here. And when I go to Sephardi ones, oh, you are the one who goes to Ashkenazi shul. It's never me. So there you are.
Elia, part of your book that intrigued me is you come over as a Benghazi Sephardi and you end up going to Gateshead. How did you cope with that?
Well, Gateshead was a wonderful place. It was a wonderful place for many reasons. Apart from learning, which is most important, I was able to hide from the Home Office for a few. No, because at some time, at some stage, a few years later, I got a letter from the Libyan embassy saying, "We've got you've got to come by the." I remember the date, 24th of August. That was in 1962, 63. To collect your travel document, you must go to Libya by the 24th of August. And my parents were ready. I had nobody there, and they've obviously discovered. I wonder where the heck did they find where I was, and in fact, I another long story. You see it in the book. I was the chairman of the Jewish Society in the college in London, and on the notice board there was Elia Meghnagi, and Meghnagi is a very well known name in Libya because the last chief rabbi of Tripoli was Babani Meghnagi, and he was the last rabbi who received a state funeral. The Arabs, everybody. So it's a well-known name. So that's how they found out where I was. Yeah. I need time for you to buy the book or look at it at least.
Before I make this statement, I'll say this. I'm not related to Elia, nor am I his agent. Somebody once said there's a difference between a pessimist and an optimist. A pessimist sees a problem in every opportunity. An optimist sees an opportunity in every problem. And Elia, when you read this book, shows is not only is an optimist, but a Jew of great faith.
You know why we are friends? We're both optimists. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right, Bear, as usual. You know. Of course, Deborah is here, all the way from Israel. She did a fantastic job with the book, a really fantastic job. And of course, David kept our computer working perfectly whilst I was doing the work.
I'd like to thank Elia for his fascinating and uplifting talk and marvel at his lifetime adventures. I think he will now have a more settled and less adventurous time in the future. I am led to understand that Edgware is a rather less challenging place to live in than Benghazi. We shall be placing a recording of tonight's talk on the Edgware United YouTube channel fairly soon, and you can also find other recorded past sessions there. If you watch the recording on YouTube and enjoy it, remember to like it and subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much, Elia.